Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Director Cordray, thank you for appearing here today before us. I want to ask you today about the widespread failure in consumer protection that occurred at Wells Fargo over a number of years regarding fraudulent sales practices in which Wells Fargo fired 5,300 employees for opening, up to 1.5 million deposit and credit card accounts without customers' knowledge or consent. Sir, despite receiving more than 140,000 pages of responsive records from Wells Fargo, the OCC, and the CFPB, this committee, to date, has seen no evidence that the CFPB had an ongoing, independent investigation relating to Wells Fargo sales practices prior to May 8th, 2015. This is 4 days after Wells Fargo informed the CFPB that the LA City attorney filed a civil complaint against the bank that same day, and over 500 days, sir, after the original article by the LA Times first broke the story about fraudulent accounts at Wells. Director Cordray, there is a binder just to your right, sir. It's got a congressional seal on it. Will you grab it, please? The binder to your right, sir. You don't care to take the binder? All right. It's in front of you. There are documents, sir. I'm going to be referencing. Perhaps you'd like to reference them also. And I'd like the record to reflect that the gentleman has ignored the binder that Congress has put in front of him. I'll be referencing it, and I'd appreciate it if you'd keep your answers very, very short, sir. Simply yes or no on most of them.
I'm quite familiar with the background.
Do you recall when you first read the December 2013 LA Times article I'm referring to?
Beg your pardon? Have I read that article?
When did you first read the article?
I do not know when I first read that article.
At the Senate Banking Committee's hearing in September 2016 on Wells Fargo. Well, let me ask you, did you read it?
I have read that article.
All right.
I don't
At the Senate Banking
recall when I
Committee's
first
hearing
read
in
it.
September 2016 on Wells Fargo, LA City Attorney Michael Fior noted in his testimony that upon reading the LA Times article, he, quote, immediately instructed his staff to investigate the allegations. Do you believe that was an appropriate response, yes or no?
I believe that Mike Fuhr and his team conducted themselves...
Was that appropriate response, yes or no?
...in exemplary fashion
Did
throughout
you
this
also
case.
instruct your staff, to immediately investigate the allegations made in the LA Times article after you read it, yes or no?
Actually, we had previous indication that there might be problems at Wells Fargo.
Did you instruct them, yes or no?
We had 2 whistleblower tips
Did
earlier
you instruct them,
in
yes
that
or no?
year.
I'll get to that in a moment, sir. I'm asking you a yes or no question.
So it wasn't the LA Times article that tipped us off to the fact that there might be a problem.
Let me reclaim my time. Did the CFPB first initiate a supervisory review of Wells Fargo branch sales practices on May 8th, 2015?
No, that's not correct. That's not a correct...
Exhibit 1 in the binder that you prefer not to look at in front of you is a letter dated March 3rd. It's up here for review also. Dated March 3rd, 2016 from Edwin Chow, an employee of yours, a CFPB regional director for the West Region, where he indicated to Wells Fargo that the CFPB, and this is a quote, initiated a supervisory review of Wells Fargo's branch sales practices on May 8th, 2015. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter this letter in the hearing.
Without objection.
Are you denying that the CFPB initiated its supervisory review of Wells Fargo's branch sales practices on May 8th, 2015? Yes or no?
We actually had engaged in supervisory activity prior to that time.
Did the CFPB notify Wells Fargo on March 3rd, 2016 that the CFPB had decided to refer this matter to enforcement, sir?
That's the key point that I want to make sure you're clear on. Okay?
Mr. Chairman.
We were engaged in... What's happening?
Just a point of parliamentary...
Clerk will suspend. For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering, according to the rules, am I entitled to any of the documents that we're questioning the witness on? Because I'd really like to get copies of the documents if I could.
They will be provided to all members.
But we're doing the investigation now, and I was just wondering if I could get copies of... If copies of the documents have been provided to all the members as under the rules are required.
Members may request copies of the documents, and they will be provided to members after the request.
May I make it a formal request to get the documents, please?
I'm sorry, would the gentleman repeat the question?
May I get the documents then? I guess I have to ask for them.
Apparently, they are being provided to you as we speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Clerk
Chairman.
can start the clock again. Gentlelady is once again recognized.
Are you denying, sir, that CFPB initiated its supervisory review of Wells Fargo branch sales practices on May 8th, 2015, yes or no?
Well, no, a moment ago you said enforcement investigation, and as I said
Mr.
in my
Chairman.
introductory,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, is it possible for?
Gentlelady will suspend. For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri seek recognition?
I would love to see these documents too. The gentlewoman has raised some interesting points, and I think that the documents should be shared with the
Mr.
committee.
Chairman?
Will the gentleman yield?
I
Mr.
yield.
Chairman, why don't we just give the documents to all the members over here?
They will be provided in a timely fashion. They are not violative of any committee rules, and I think so far what the gentlelady has alluded to is also put onto the committee screens. Gentlelady from Missouri is recognized yet
Can
again.
I have my time restored, Mr. Chairman, please?
The time was stopped.
Did the CFPB, sir, notify Wells Fargo on March 3rd, 2016, that the CFPB had decided to refer this matter to enforcement? Yes or no?
yes, when that happens,
Okay.
there had been previous
So you do not
work
deny
done
that the
on the matter.
CFPB represented in writing that it referred this matter to enforcement on March 3rd, 2016. That is correct?
So let me clarify this for you. The
Sir, my
letter-
time is limited,
I'm-
and I have a lot of questions.
I understand. The letter dated March 3rd, it is a point at which we have decided that the matter has risen to a level where it's no longer a supervisory matter.
Reclaiming my
and
time.
in fact, is becoming an
Did the
enforcement
CFPB
matter.
refer this matter to enforcement around the same time that the LA City Attorney began settlement negotiations with Wells Fargo?
Yes, but that's not when we initiated work on the matter.
Wow, what an amazing coincidence, because in fact, the CFPB referred this Wells Fargo matter to enforcement on March 3rd, 2016. The LA City Attorney referred it on March 2nd, 2016. What an amazing coincidence. Did the
It's not-
CFPB, sir?
These aren't coincidences. We're
Sir,
in contact with
reclaiming
local
my time,
officials.
reclaiming my
We're
time.
in
Did the
contact with
CFPB
officials around the
first
country,
request-
and we
first
work
request-
cooperatively with them.
Director Cordray, did the CFPB first request that Wells Fargo delay the destruction of records relating to its branch sales practices on May 8th, 2015?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Did the CFPB first request that Wells Fargo delay the destruction of records related to its branch sales practices on May 8th, 2015?
Consistent with the fact that it had migrated and graduated into an enforcement action.
Edwin
Yes.
Chow's letter from the CFPB, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter it into the record as Exhibit 3.
Without objection.
Sir, so you agree, and so you do not deny that the CFPB's first requested on May 8th, 2015, that Wells Fargo's delay the destruction of records pertaining to its branch sales practices? Yes or no?
So that's just a reminder of
Is that a
obligations that
yes or
already
no,
exist
sir?
under
Is
the
that
law.
when you sent the request? Yes or no?
That's a reminder
That
of
is
the
I'll
obligations
take
that
the
already
reminder
exist
as a
under the law.
yes.
Yeah.
Was it the first time that the CFPB made this request to Wells Fargo? Then why didn't the CFPB produce those records to this committee, given the fact that such records would be responsive to the committee's record request of September 16th, 2016, which is Exhibit 5, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to have, that's in your binder, that I'd also like to
Without
have
objection.
entered into the record.
So I'm sorry, we've given you documents, and if there are more documents that you want, we're happy to
We've been
work
asking
with your
for
staff.
documents, as
So-
everyone on this side of the aisle has referenced, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of days, sir, and you are in woeful compliance. Let me move on.
If there are
Did the
documents you
first-
don't have, happy
Director
to try to
Cordray, I
provide
want to
them.
stay on this measure. Did the CFPB first request on May 8th, 2015, that Wells Fargo produce items such as sales practice policies and actions taken by the bank regarding fraudulent sales practices at the bank? Yes or no?
Those are the compelled production of documents
or
that
no,
became very
sir?
significant to this
Yes or no,
investigation.
sir?
Yes.
All right, good. So you do not deny that the CFPB's first requested that Wells Fargo produce this information on May 8th, 2015?
No, that's not correct. And you're conflating things, and I don't want you to
Cordray-
build on that in an erroneous fashion.
Well, let me move on then. If you're saying that this
They're
isn't
already-
the first time,
No.
if you're saying this isn't the first time the CFPB requested this information
That's-
from Wells Fargo, then why didn't the CFPB produce those records to this committee?
Look,
Given
first-
that such records would be responsive to the committee's request of September 16th, 2016, which is Exhibit 5 has been put in. I have a few
First
more.
of all,
Did the CFPB ever contact Wells Fargo about its fraudulent branch sales practices before Wells Fargo informed the CFPB on May 4th, 2015? Yes or no?
We had had supervisory activity prior to that time and subsequent to that time,
I'll
which
take that as a
ultimately
yes.
resulted.
Were you aware that
ul-
that the earliest correspondence between the CFPB and the Wells Fargo that you have produced is the Edwin Chow letter of May 8th, 2015?
There was supervisory activity prior to that time
All
and
right, let's get
subsequent
to
to
that.
that time.
Is this the earliest correspondence between the CFPB and Wells Fargo pertaining to the bank's sales practices?
I don't know exactly, but
All right, well, I'll leave that. Did the CFPB depose or interview only 3 Wells Fargo employees in connection with the fraudulent accounts
the
scandal?
CFPB took the only depositions that occurred in this
3?
case.
Were they 3? Yes or no, 3?
The only ones that occurred in this
Were they
case.
3,
we
sir?
took them.
Is
We
that- is
took
that
them.
correct?
So,
That is correct then, yes. Wow. You tout CFPB's investigation as both independent and comprehensive. Director Cordray, only interviewing 3 employees for such widespread cases of fraudulent practices where 5,300 employees were fired does not seem very comprehensive to me, sir. In your letter to this committee on September 23rd, 2016, you indicate that Bureau staff first became aware of some related issues around Wells Fargo. This was well over a year before either initiating a supervisory review or containing the bank about fraudulent practices, sir. It's most concerning. I don't have much time left.
so let me-
No, I'm going to close here,
okay.
sir.
You
and
don't
then
wanna give me a
Chairman can
chance
see if
to
he can yield
respond?
or
That's
not.
okay.
Director
All
Cordray, from the minimal records you've given to this committee thus far, and based on your testimony, the only conclusion there is to draw regarding the Wells Fargo scandal is that the CFPB was asleep at the wheel, Director Cordray, under your
not correct.
leadership, and that your
correct.
investigation in this matter was far from independent and comprehensive, sir. You have claimed that the CFPB was created to root out this kind of widespread consumer harm, but the LA Times, the
correct.
OCC, the LA City Attorney, all got there before you did, sir. I'd encourage you,
Time.
after your testimony, to
Time of the gentlelady.
revise your remarks, sir.
Time of the gentlelady has
I would yield back
expired.
my
The
time.
chair now recognizes